In every retelling of Greek mythology, there's one character you can count on to be the villain. The jealous wife, the vindictive queen, the woman who punishes innocent people for her husband's crimes. Hera. Percy Jackson portrays her as petty and cruel. Disney's Hercules turns her into a one-dimensional shrew. Marvel Comics, God of War, every modern retelling, they all agree Hera is the problem. But what if we've been telling this story backwards? What if Hera isn't the villain, but the victim who became the weapon? If you know anything about Greek mythology, you know Hera's reputation. She's the goddess of marriage, queen of Olympus, wife of Zeus, and according to every myth, she's absolutely insufferable. Jealous, vengeful, obsessed with punishing her husband's lovers, the ancient Greeks painted her as the quintessential crazy wife, and we've been running with that narrative for 3,000 years. The stories are consistent. Zeus has an affair, Hera punishes the woman. Zeus fathers a child, Hera torments that child. Zeus so much as looks at someone, Hera transforms them into an animal and makes their life a living nightmare. Io, turned into a cow and chased across continents. Callisto, transformed into a bear and nearly killed by her own son. Semele, tricked into a request that burned her alive. Leto, forbidden from giving birth anywhere on solid ground. Echo, cursed to lose her voice forever. Heracles, tormented from birth just for existing. The list goes on, and on, and on. 20+ women and children destroyed by Hera's rage. But here's the question nobody asks. Why does Hera punish Zeus's victims instead of Zeus? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning. Before Hera was the wronged wife, she was Zeus's first victim. The marriage of Zeus and Hera, the divine template for all Greek marriages, began with assault. Here's the story they don't put in the children's books. Zeus wanted Hera, but Hera, one of the few goddesses with actual standards, rejected him repeatedly. So Zeus did what Zeus does. He transformed himself this time into an injured cuckoo bird, small, helpless, shivering in a storm. Hera found the bird and took pity on it. She held it close to keep it warm. And then Zeus revealed himself and forced himself on her. The ancient sources describe this as seduction. Let's be clear. What's described is assault. A powerful being transforming into something vulnerable to get close to someone, then attacking them. That's predation with premeditation. After the assault, Zeus offered marriage, not as apology, not as love, but because in ancient Greek culture, a woman who had been violated was considered ruined. Marriage was how you hid the shame. Hera accepted, not because she loved him, not because she forgave him, but because refusing meant eternal disgrace, being damaged goods among the gods. And here's the critical part. In Greek theology, divorce didn't exist for goddesses. Marriage was eternal. There was no escape clause, no divine decree that could free her. Hera was trapped, forever, married to the god who assaulted her. The goddess of marriage was the greatest prisoner of marriage. That's not irony, that's imprisonment. So Hera was trapped in a marriage with a serial predator, and Zeus didn't stop. Of course he didn't. He assaulted goddesses, nymphs, mortal women, sometimes dozens in a single generation, and Hera, unable to touch her husband, did the only thing her powerlessness allowed. She destroyed his victims. Io was a priestess. Specifically, she was Hera's own priestess. serving in Hera's temple in Argos. Zeus assaulted her there, in Hera's sacred space. When Hera discovered this, she didn't confront Zeus. She couldn't. Instead, she transformed Io, Hera's own priestess, into a cow. But transformation wasn't enough. Hera sent a gadfly, a stinging insect, to torment Io eternally. The gadfly bit and stung, driving Io mad with pain. She ran and ran and ran. Across Greece, across Asia, crossing the sea that would be named after her suffering, the Ionian Sea. Io wandered for years, tortured every single moment, unable to speak, unable to be human, unable to die. Zeus's crime took minutes. Hera's punishment lasted years. And Zeus moved on to his next victim. Callisto was one of Artemis's huntresses, women who took vows of eternal celibacy to serve the virgin goddess. Callisto was devoted, careful, safe. Zeus assaulted her anyway, and because he's Zeus, he did it while disguised as Artemis herself, violating Callisto with the face of the goddess she trusted most. When Callisto became pregnant, Artemis discovered the broken vow and expelled her from the hunt in disgrace. Callisto tried to explain, but who believes the victim over the god? Then Hera arrived. Hera transformed Callisto into a bear, not a quick, merciful transformation. The ancient sources describe her body twisting, her voice becoming growls, her hands becoming claws. Worse, Callisto kept her human mind, trapped in an animal body, unable to speak, unable to explain. Years later, Callisto's own son, Heracles, now grown, went hunting. He encountered a bear. The bear didn't run. It approached him, trying to communicate, trying to show recognition. Heracles raised his spear to kill what he thought was a wild animal. He was about to murder his own mother and never know it. Zeus intervened at the last second, not out of kindness, but to avoid the pollution of matricide. He turned them both into constellations, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the Great Bear and the Little Bear. A touching ending, right? Except Hera wasn't finished. She went to her foster parents, Oceanus and Tethys, who controlled the seas. She demanded they curse Callisto's constellation never to touch the ocean, which means Ursa Major never dips below the horizon. It circles the sky eternally, never resting, never setting. Even in the stars, Callisto couldn't escape. Semele was a mortal princess of Thebes. Zeus came to her in human form, and she became pregnant with what would become the god Dionysus. Hera heard about it. But this time, Hera didn't attack directly. She disguised herself as an old woman, a nurse, someone Semele trusted, and she planted a seed of doubt. If he really is Zeus, the old woman whispered, ask him to prove it. Ask him to appear in his true divine form. If he loves you, he'll show you who he really is. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? If someone claims to love you, they should be honest about who they are. But Hera knew something Semele didn't. Mortals cannot witness a god's true form and survive. The divine radiance burns them to ash instantly. Semele asked, and Zeus, bound by an oath he'd made to grant her any wish, was forced to comply. He appeared in his true form. Semele burned alive in seconds. Her unborn child would have died too, except Zeus cut the fetus from her womb and sewed it into his own thigh to finish the pregnancy. Hera manipulated Semele into requesting her own execution, and it worked perfectly. Leto's story is perhaps the cruelest because it involves punishing a woman during the most vulnerable moment of her life, childbirth. Leto, pregnant with Zeus's twins, Apollo and Artemis, went into labor. Normally, not a crisis. Except Hera issued a divine decree. No land on Earth was allowed to give Leto shelter. Leto wandered in active labor for 9 days. Every island, every shore, every piece of ground refused her, terrified of Hera's wrath. Finally, she found Delos, a floating island not technically connected to the ocean floor, a loophole. Leto gave birth there, collapsing from exhaustion. But Hera still wasn't satisfied. She sent Python, the monstrous serpent, to hunt Leto and kill her newborns. Python failed the infant. Apollo killed it days after being born. But the message was clear. Even after birth, even after survival, Leto and her children would never be safe from Hera's wrath. 4 women, 4 completely different punishments, 4 lives destroyed. And the common thread? None of them chose Zeus. None of them wanted this. They were victims before Hera ever touched them. Which raises the obvious question. If Hera's rage was justified, and it absolutely was, why couldn't she aim it at Zeus? Actually, she tried. Once. According to Homer's Iliad, Hera got tired of Zeus's tyranny. Not just the affairs, everything. His unilateral decisions, his abuse of power, his complete disregard for anyone else's will. So Hera organized a rebellion. She recruited Poseidon, Zeus's brother and god of the seas. She brought in Athena, Zeus's favorite daughter. Together, they drugged Zeus's wine and waited until he fell into a deep sleep. Then they chained him to his bed with unbreakable chains. For a brief moment, Hera won. Zeus was bound, powerless, trapped the way she'd been trapped for thousands of years. This should be a triumphant moment in the story, right? The abused wife finally restrains her abuser. But Thetis, a sea nymph who owed Zeus a favor, panicked. She freed one of the hecatoncheires, the 100-handed giants, and brought it to Olympus. The giant broke Zeus's chains in seconds. And then came the punishment. Zeus hung Hera from the sky. Golden chains wrapped around her wrists. Anvils, massive, impossibly heavy anvils attached to her feet, pulling her down, stretching her in agony. She hung there all night while the gods watched, screaming, begging. No one helped her. Zeus only released her when she swore an oath of eternal obedience, never to plot against him again, never to raise a hand, never to fight back. That was the price of rebellion. That was what happened when Hera tried to free herself. So she learned. Not that Zeus was untouchable, she already knew that, but that the consequences of trying to touch him were worse than staying trapped. And so her rage, completely justified, utterly righteous rage, found new targets. Targets Zeus didn't care if she destroyed. Let's be clear about Hera's situation. She couldn't divorce Zeus. There was no mechanism for it in Greek theology. Marriage to Zeus was part of her divine identity. She literally was the goddess of marriage, because she was married to the king of gods. Leaving him would mean losing her power, her domain, possibly her immortality. She couldn't kill him. He was immortal and far stronger than her. She couldn't depose him. She tried, and it ended with her hanging from the sky. She couldn't even publicly shame him. Zeus controlled the narrative, controlled the other gods, controlled everything. Hera was trapped in an abusive marriage with the most powerful being in existence, watching him hurt others endlessly, unable to stop him, unable to leave. So what does someone do with that rage? That justified, righteous, burning rage with nowhere to go? You aim it where you can, at targets who can't fight back, at people weaker than you. It's not right, it's not just, but it's what happens when the person who deserves your rage is untouchable. Hera punished Io, Callisto, Semele, Leto, Echo, Lamia, and dozens more. She punished Heracles for his entire life, just for being born. She made their lives unbearable. And Zeus kept doing exactly what he'd always done, because Hera's rage never touched him. She destroyed 20 women. She punished Zeus once, and he made sure she'd never try again. If Hera's story sounds familiar, it should. We see this pattern constantly in modern relationships. A man cheats, his wife finds out, and who does she go after? The other woman. She calls her a homewrecker, a slut, a manipulator. She blames this woman for stealing her husband, as if he was a passive object with no agency. Meanwhile, the husband gets a slap on the wrist, maybe some couples therapy, and the marriage continues. This is Hera's pattern, played out in millions of relationships. Attack the symptom, preserve the system, stay trapped. Or think about how we talk about women in the public eye. When a powerful man is caught in a scandal, we scrutinize every woman involved. What was she wearing? Why was she there? What did she want from him? We put them on trial. We dissect their motives. We call them opportunists or liars. And the man, he made a mistake. He's only human. Let's not ruin his life over this. This is misdirected rage on a societal scale. We've been trained to aim our anger at the people with less power, because the people with more power can make us pay for challenging them. Just like Zeus taught Hera. Understanding Hera means understanding how abuse creates cycles. Hurt people, but they usually hurt those weaker than themselves, not those who originally hurt them. Hera's anger was valid, completely, utterly justified. She had every right to be enraged. But her targets were wrong, and that's the tragedy. Every woman Hera destroyed was killed twice. First by Zeus through assault, manipulation, or coercion. Then by Hera, the only one who might have understood their pain. Imagine if Hera had protected Zeus's victims instead of punishing them. If she had sheltered Leto, defended Callisto, warned Semele. Zeus would have faced a coalition of furious, betrayed women with divine power. That's a threat. But Hera destroyed them before they could unite. She did Zeus's work for him. And that's patriarchy's most elegant weapon, a woman's justified rage, aimed at other women. As long as Hera and Io and Callisto and Semele are fighting each other, Zeus is safe. As long as women blame each other for men's violence, the system stays intact. This is why we need to stop calling Hera the villain. She's not. She's a victim who became a weapon. There's a difference. Recognizing that difference means we can break the pattern. The good news is, we're not gods. We're not trapped by divine decrees or eternal marriages. We can leave, we can fight back, we can redirect our rage where it belongs. When a powerful person abuses their power, the answer is not to attack those they hurt, it's to hold them accountable. When someone cheats, the answer is not to destroy the other woman. It's to evaluate whether the relationship deserves saving and whether the person who betrayed you deserves your time. And when we see other women suffering from the same system we escaped or are trapped in, we support them. We believe them. We don't become Hera. Hera's story is a warning, not an instruction manual. Her rage was justified. Her actions were not. Both things are true. And if we learn anything from her 3,000 years of fury, it should be this: rage at your oppressor, not their other victims. Hera deserved better. She deserved to never be assaulted by Zeus. She deserved the freedom to leave. She deserved a life where her anger could be righteous and effective, instead of justified but misdirected. Her victims deserved better too. Io, Callisto, Semele, Leto, they deserved protection from the goddess who understood their pain, not more punishment. And we deserve better than repeating this cycle for another 3,000 years. The next time you see a woman's anger, ask yourself, is she angry at the person who hurt her, or at someone easier to reach? The next time you're angry, ask yourself the same question. Hera spent eternity punishing the wrong people. We don't have to. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What would Hera's rage have looked like if she'd aimed it at Zeus instead? This is Mythology Uncensored. Thank you for listening.